Many young athletes struggle with discipline, consistency, and accountability. But what many young athletes don't know is that something as simple as setting goals is scientifically proven to increase your consistency and your performance. I am thrilled to be working with the company Sports Hogs. It is a family-run company that specializes in making journals where you can track your process goals. Each journal, here's mine for basketball, gives you an opportunity to list your goals, how you want to implement them, and then gives you opportunities to not only reflect on goals in your workouts, but also reflect on each game performance over the course of the season. My favorite part of these Sports Hogs journals is the space where you as an athlete can list positive affirmations to keep yourself motivated. And if you need a little extra positivity, there are great quotes from legendary athletes filled in the journal. This family did an outstanding job creating resources for young athletes all over the country. And if you want to take advantage of this resource, visit sportshogs.com. That's sportshogs.com. Get a hand on your journal today. Greetings, information superhighway, and welcome to the 14th episode of the Nail the Recruiting Process podcast. Now, this is episode 14 overall, but this is episode 2 of our 3-part How to Do It series. This stemmed from a series of conversations with coaches and former athletes about the exact things you should be preparing for to be recruited at a high level to become a college athlete at the school of your dreams. And now we're focusing on how to actually do those things. So you heard the what from the authorities in charge. Last week, you heard all about strength and conditioning in a great interview with Coach Chase Skinkiss, one of the jump guys at Project Pure Athlete. This week, you're going to hear from Tony Watson and Rod Middleton at Pro Training Basketball, all about how to do all of the little things to get your game better behind the scenes. I'm so excited about how this interview with them came out. We're going to talk more about them in a second, but first, it's time for a Mets check-in. And, I'm raising a newborn, so I didn't have enough time to make like a edited soundbite with like lasers and sound effects. It's like, Mets check-in. But guess what? The Mets are now tied 1-1 in a division series playoff with the Philadelphia Phillies after beating the Brewers with another late inning comeback. And I want to talk more about that comeback specifically because I think it has a lot to do with what we talk about on this podcast. My original plan here was to play the video and audio clip of Pete Alonso's 3-run home run that gave the Mets a 1-run lead in the top of the 9th inning at Milwaukee in Game 3, the deciding game of the series. Upon realizing that I was going to be sued into oblivion if I did that, I decided not to do it. I don't have the money right now. One day, if the Nail the Recruiting Process podcast takes off the way I think it's capable, I guess, maybe I'll just air the footage and take the risk. But for now, we are not going to enter a cease and desist lawsuit with Major League Baseball. What I will do instead is I will set the table for you. Pete Alonso has been in what baseball fans call a walk year. He's in the final year of his contract. He's due to make a lot of money because regardless of his average, regardless of his strikeouts, he's a risk-reward power hitter. He is consistently at or near the top of the National League in home runs. Obviously, with the all-time historic year that Shohei Ohtani's having, he's setting the bar for power. But Pete Alonso is consistently one of the best sluggers in baseball. This year, he has not been as good as he has in previous seasons. You could tell it's been wearing on him. The New York sports media, notoriously ruthless. They've been riding him a lot. And he had not had a consequential hit since the middle of September. He struggled in the first 2 games of this series. Pete Alonso steps up to plate, and the 3 really big figures on the Mets roster are the ones that decide the game. Francisco Lindor reaches base. Brandon Nimmo advances him with a base hit. Pete Alonso hits a 3-run home run in the top of the 9th inning. The Mets seal the game with an insurance run, close it out, and move on to play the Phillies. And by the way, they are competing. And it is now crystal clear that this core of the New York Mets belongs here. We are way past the Grimace thing was cool and, we're riding gimmicks. This Mets team belongs and they're playing great. But what I want to do for you, the recruit, and for any parent that's listening to this podcast is I actually want to appeal to you as a longtime coach about the behind the scenes part of that home run. And I'll start by saying, whenever I would break down film of, a successful basketball play, obviously the person that made the shot deserves props. And in this instance, that's Pete Alonso for the home run. But we also break down the other things that made the play go well. Was it a good screen that set up the shooter? Was it really good misdirection? Was it a great decision by whoever had the ball in their hands to set up the open shooter? All of those things really matter. And even though that Pete Alonso home run is one of the most consequential moments in the history of Mets baseball, I actually think there were some small moments that were just as important that I want to call to your attention. 3 moments to be exact. Here's the first one. In the top of the 7th inning, Pete Alonso strikes out in what could have been his final at-bat as a New York Met. You could tell it weighed on him a little bit because he goes out into the field and he has a fielding error. And it's raining on Pete Alonso in that moment. Routine pop fly down the first baseline heading into foul territory. Pete Alonso drops it. And as Pete Alonso returns to play, he's greeted by a teammate who this guy, by the way, has become probably my favorite Met. He's greeted by Jose Iglesias. Jose Iglesias says to him, listen, we're going to find a way to get you up again in the 9th inning, and you're going to hit a home run. Keep that mindset. You're going to hit a home run in the 9th inning. It's a pretty powerful thing for a teammate in that moment to say, especially when the Mets do just enough to get Pete Alonso up again in the top of the 9th inning, and he hits a home run. Post-game, Pete Alonso was seen embracing Jose Iglesias and thanking him for that positive messaging. That really matters. We're going to hold on to the why for a moment. That really, really matters to me. The second thing, on 2 separate occasions in a calendar week, the Mets manager, Carlos Mendoza, publicly supports Pete Alonso. First, the Mets draw huge crowds in their final home series of the season because they're must-win games as they're pushing in the wild card race. And Alonso gets a series of ovations because it looks like this could be, again, it's his walk year, his last at-bats at Citi Field. And the crowd really, really, showers him with praise. And Mendoza is asked post-game, how do you feel about these final at-bats or these potential final at-bats at home for Pete Alonso? And without missing a beat, he looks at the reporter and goes, these aren't Pete Alonso's final home at-bats as a Met. He's valuable to us, and we're going to be back here playing playoff baseball. Whoa, that matters. Now flash forward almost a week later, a little less than a week. He's again talking to the media post-game. This time after Pete Alonso fails to do anything of consequence through the first 2 games of the series. It's now tied. They're going to a must-win game 3. And he looks at the media and he says, don't worry about Pete Alonso. Pete Alonso is a power hitter. All a power hitter needs to do is make great contact once to shift the scales of a game, and he's going to do that for us tomorrow in game 3. That matters. We'll talk more about why in a second. And the final thing that really, really matters is Pete Alonso himself. And I heard a very interesting soundbite from former All-Star and current Mets hitting coach Eric Chavez. He was an awesome player during the Oakland A's Moneyball era. If you're unfamiliar with that, go look it up. You'll be entertained by his highlights. And there's a clip that was caught on television, which was in the top of the 9th, right before he goes up to bat. Eric Chavez is talking to Pete Alonso, and he's basically telling him, this is what you're looking for on the changeup. And you could see them repeatedly mouthing the word changeup to one another. He's talking to Alonso about getting ahead of it, and he's gesturing what he wants Alonso to do. And Alonso looks back at him and goes, I'm going to push it. I'm going to push it. And Alonso is just deep in his process, and he's focusing on what he's going to do if he sees a changeup. And lo and behold, Alonso gets a changeup. He pushes it to right field, and the moment it leaves his bat, you have to see this for yourselves without getting sued, obviously. You have to see this for yourself because the moment it leaves his bat, knows he hit a home run. The dugout goes crazy for him. He goes crazy, and he just pushes it opposite field. He was waiting for the changeup. He made the perfect contact. But an interesting thing post-game that Eric Chavez says to the media, in that moment, Pete Alonso was actually calmer than me. He kept repeating to himself, and I'm reading the quote here, "I'm right there. I'm just one swing away." And he was talking to his teammates like he was going to crush the ball. Pete Alonso himself says post-game, "I just did everything I could to stay focused. I don't really get defeated. Obviously, this is a huge moment for me, but I didn't think the moment was too big. I trusted my process." That really matters. Now, what does that have to do with you, the recruit, or you, the parent of recruit? Everything. The three things that I just described are three of the most important things to your fit and to your high performance inside of an optimal team culture. Thing number one, teammates who support you. The fact that in his darkest moment of that game, he had a teammate being like, "Here's what you're about to do, and we're going to help you do it," matters. The fact that he had coaches saying, "Hey, you've done this before. You're going to do this again. We're going to put you in the right spot to be successful, and you're going to succeed, and we trust you. And not only are we going to trust you in-house, but we're going to support you externally to anyone else that doesn't trust you." That matters. And finally, he trusted his own process. He trusted the work that he's been doing. He never mentally fatigued to the point of disconnection, even when the results were coming his way. He trusted that everything he was doing was going to work out for him. And guess what? It did. That is how you need to explore this process. And that is why the chemistry of this team matters so much to me. The Mets are not always like this. No sports team is always like this. That doesn't change the fact that this is the type of team that you should try to find as a recruit when you are searching for a place to go to college. Now, this is a cool segue for me because my introduction to college basketball was through some grad intern work at the University of Buffalo. And I loved the culture of that team when I was there. I loved the coaching staff. I loved the players. And you've already heard from some of the players that I met during that time when I talked to Sean Smiley and Zach Filzen in the great Division III Myth-Busting podcast from the first half of the first season. Now I want to introduce you to a few other characters from that time in my life. And to give you an idea of a good culture, one of the things that I loved about my time at UB was that there were always alums in the building. Turner Battle, who became an incredible assistant both at UB and elsewhere, most notably recently at UAB in Alabama, after being an All-American player at Buffalo, was a great coach, and a lot of his former teammates were constantly in the gym, constantly in the locker room, constantly being positive influences for the current players, and I loved watching that, and I learned a lot from them. One of the members of the UB team when I was there was Tony Watson. I was with Tony his freshman and sophomore year. Tony was an outstanding combo guard who ended up playing professionally after being a team captain for UB his final 2 years there. One of the alums who constantly swung through was Rod Middleton. Rod Middleton played mostly during Turner Battle's time at UB, worked his way into more each year that he was there, took unbelievable care of his body, played professionally overseas, and whenever he was home, he would come back and watch the UB guys. This is the story of Tony Watson and Rod Middleton and pro training basketball. So Tony Watson graduates from UB, plays professionally, comes home, and decides to start a social media series. And Tony Watson consistently, under the moniker Pro Training Basketball, puts out the best instructional videos for ball handling, for decision-making, for footwork, for shooting that I have seen anyone put on YouTube to this day. I have yet to see anyone top Tony Watson's video content on YouTube. Would you like some proof that Tony Watson did a good job? Well, Pro Training Basketball has 250,000 followers on social media. That's pretty good. It's a little bit better than how I'm doing. Only a little. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. It's a lot better than how I'm doing. I know tons of coaches, myself included, who have college players that they have sent Tony's pro training basketball drills to get them better when they want to do workouts on their own time. Now, Rod Middleton finishes his professional playing career. He comes back to the States. He starts working with Tony, and the project goes from social media and skills training to maybe we can make a whole business out of this. So Rod and Tony, after their relationship at UB, become business partners. Rod, who's already a certified strength and conditioning coach, joins pro training basketball full time. They open up a physical facility in Buffalo, New York, North Tonawanda to be exact. They are doing very, very well, training young athletes to be better basketball players, getting them ready if they want to get recruited to play college basketball, and coaching AAU. As this process happens, they also both become high school coaches locally in the area. Rod is still doing that work. Tony has decided to step away from coaching for a little bit to be with his young child. I totally get that because I have a young child sleeping in the other room. And Rod is now the primary contact and owner of Pro Training Basketball. Together, they are a two-headed monster that has helped a generation of athletes in Western New York achieve their basketball dreams. They have played at every level. Their backstories are incredible, and I can't wait for you to hear them. But most importantly, this is, and you'll hear me say this at the tail end of the podcast, pound for pound, the most informative basketball conversation I have ever had that's been recorded. I cannot believe the amount of productive information you are going to get about how to get better at basketball completely for free. We're not gatekeeping anything. You are about to hear everything from the types of training that you should be doing, the types of decisions you should be looking to make in your workout, what a day of workout actually should look like depending on the level you want to get to, and how you should structure it, how to communicate expectations with the coach, and then, of course, because this is a podcast about the recruiting process, how to stand out in the recruiting process to coaches. These are people I've known for a very long time, and I'm very excited for you to get to know them. The Pro Training Basketball guys, Tony Watson and Rod Middleton, are my guests for this week, and it starts right now. It's been a minute since I've seen Tony Watson and Rod Middleton in person, but at a minimum, I'm thrilled to see them virtually. So good morning, fellas. How we doing? How we doing?
Doing well. How about yourself, Jared?
Same. Doing great. I'm excited to see you guys.
Yeah, doing good over here as well, man.
All right. So your guys' mission, should you choose to accept it, because you have a lot of things in common with your own personal experiences. You worked really hard to get scholarships to Division I level. You worked even harder to become professional basketball players. You've given a lot back to the local community in terms of coaching and training. So your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to guide young players and their parents through what the work really looks like to grow. Are we ready for that adventure?
Absolutely, man.
Okay, perfect. So let's start just by giving our listeners an opportunity to get to know you guys a little bit. You both have, lifelong relationships with the game of basketball. Can you walk us through, just one at a time, a little bit of your own experience with the game and why it was so important to, develop others at this stage of your career?
Got it right. Well, I guess we're gonna take it all the way back to I guess my high school days. We'll start there. It's funny, like looking back at it now, like I was good, but I don't think I was as good as I thought I was back then. Obviously when you're in it, you think you're the best player. And I had a lot of success early. Like I always played up. I mean, AAU, I never played my age group. I always played up. When I was in high school, I played on varsity, all 4 years, starting as a freshman. So, in my head during that time period, I obviously I thought I was a lot better than what I was, but you don't really understand that until you kind of go through it. And I like to think I was a hard worker. I mean, in high school, I was waking up 6 a.m., work out before school. I would shower, go to class. After school, I was working out, but you don't know what you don't know. So I never had a trainer growing up, right? My high school coach, he wasn't really in the gym like that. He was more of like a X and O guy. So there was no really like YouTube, obviously no Instagram, none of that stuff. So like the only way I could figure things out was to watch like NBA games, and you see a move and you're like, bet I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna practice that, or something like that.
Sure.
So, I always tell people that, especially like now, I think kids nowadays have a huge advantage just from the growth standpoint, because they're able to learn from people who have gone through it, and, can kind of teach them, what to do, what not to do. I mean, in this game, you're gonna pay one of two ways. You're either gonna pay obviously with your money to learn from someone else, or you're gonna pay with your time. And if you pay
Right.
with your time, it's typically gonna take you longer to learn a skill, right? So, as I got through my high school career, my college career, I'll probably backtrack to get into that, but, getting into the training, the whole reason why I kind of got into training was to help speed up that learning curve for kids, because I knew how long it took me to learn what I know now. And I always
Mm.
say, like, if I had a trainer and someone like who could guide me along the steps, I feel like I would have made it a lot farther. And I made it far, like Division I scholarship, played at University of Buffalo, played overseas for 4 years, played in some good leagues, top division France, second division France, England, second division Germany. But I learned a lot of that trial and error, right? Just figuring out, going through the mistakes and stuff like that. So the whole reason for me, getting in, like I said before, get into this was just to help the kids out, help them avoid some of those pitfalls and things that I didn't know, and just kind of teach them, like, nothing is guaranteed, but without hard work and dedication, like, you don't even stand a chance. And I think that's one thing that I had growing up, is I had, the dedication, I had the hard work. Like, my parents didn't have to push me like, all right, man, you got to get up, you got to get in the gym. Hey, did you work out today? Like, my parents, they're like, if this is what you want to do, like, we'll support you, but this is your journey,
Right.
type of thing. So I was fortunate enough to just be locked in, kind of at an early age, and it carries over to even what I do now. Like, I'm still getting up in the morning. Like, I just worked out before we got on this call today, so it's, yeah, the habits that you create early on follow you, through the rest of your life, as long as you stay consistent. So that's kind of why I got into the training and the coaching.
I'll tell you what, I'm really happy that you mentioned that habit stuff and being locked in, because we're definitely going to circle back, and we'll certainly circle back
Yep.
more to your story collegiately too. So I appreciate you
Yep.
sharing
Yep.
that. What about you,
Absolutely.
T2?
Yeah, so I'll keep it brief. A lot of similarities that Rod and I have. Grew up a few years after Rod did, but the journeys are similar. Didn't have a trainer growing up. The one benefit that I did have was my father was my basketball coach, literally from youth all the way through high school. He's still a high school coach today in South Florida. But growing up, I was a gym rat. I mean, we used to play all day, every day. If we weren't at the gym, we were at the park. If we were at the park, we were in the gym somewhere. Boys and girls club, recreation centers. We literally, me and my boys would pick each other up, and we would just go to the next gym. If there was another 5 guys there, we'd play them. If there wasn't, we'd try to find another gym. So we just stayed in the gym. We were always playing. We all had a great feel for the game.
Sure.
Again, at that time, like, a lot of skill-based training wasn't the regiment. It was more so, let's get up and down, let's play 5-on-5, let's play 3-on-3 if we only got 6. If we only got 2 people, we're playing 1-on-1 and we're going after it. So a lot of the skills that we built came from just competing, just going against each other, pushing each other to get better. And then luckily I also had a father who was a basketball coach too, that gave me the access, right, to not only basketball from a school standpoint, but we were able to get me on some of the best travel teams at the time. I played for Nike Team Florida before I went to college, Peach Jam, all the stuff that the kids are into today. Obviously, it has evolved immensely since then. But that pretty much gave me the platform and the runway to become a Division I athlete, play professionally, and then also open a gym with Rod when we started the whole training thing too.
So one thing that you both shared was, Tony, you talked about access, and Rod, you talked about habits. And what I see a lot of right now, especially when I talk to young people, is they have an idea of what they want to do, but they don't really know how to get there. And having that access to a mentor is hugely, hugely important. And Rod, as you shed on that in your response, hearing you talk about wanting to pay it forward because you didn't necessarily have that access in your own experience. Right. So I want to kind of give our listeners a little bit of access to you guys right now because you've mentored so many young people. You have heard a lot of people over the course of your young careers already tell you that they are working really, really hard to get better. And I know each of you have had to have some difficult conversations with some young people to be like, maybe, maybe you are. But to give you guys an opportunity to set the record straight to our listeners as former pros, and we all know the work ethic you have, to be a pro. What does the work really look like as you're trying to grow your game? Like, what would a day in the life be? If a kid's really working hard to next level it, what would it look like in your eyes based on your experience?
You want me to go first?
You can go. I went first last time. You got it. Go ahead. You got it. We're just alternate.
Yeah. So the biggest thing when you're growing up is you have obligations, obviously, right? You don't have just free reign to just working out, staying in the gym, watching films, so on and so forth, right? We got to go to school. We got chores. We got family events, all those good things. But when it really comes down to it, there's some key things that I believe you have to work on. And when I was with Rod at the gym, I actually wrote a full book on, the 12 habits that it takes to become a professional basketball player called the Hooper's Handbook. If anybody wants to look it up on Amazon.
We need a plug. We ain't got it.
I will make sure. Hey, I'm giving you my word. In the intro, I'm going to plug it. And I have a picture. Okay. There you go. Nice. Done deal.
Sounds good.
Done deal.
But pretty much what it comes down to is as you get older, as you start to progress, there are certain things that this is the bare minimum to even consider the fact that you're, on pace, right? So we're talking about strength and conditioning. We're talking about making basketball jump shots in a day. We're talking about working on your weaknesses. We're talking about sharpening your strengths. Like, if you're not going through that progression every day and it's not outlined and if it's not a regiment that you're sticking to, then you're not doing what you're supposed to. Because you have to think about it like this. Basketball is now a global sport. So if you're not putting in 2 hours a day, right, 2.5 hours a day, and I'm not saying 2 hours straight, because most people think they're going hard. They'll say they're going to the gym for 4 hours, but you're stopping to scroll on Instagram. You're checking
the same way someone says they're doing 3 hours of desk work, but they're really doom scrolling for an hour of it. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Like, so when you're in the gym, if anyone ever tells you that they went hard for 4 hours, it's not a thing. Like, you physically can't go hard for 4 hours. So what I try to break down, or what I try to tell kids when we have this conversation, is like, all right, you have a little bit of time before school. Can you put in 45 to 60 minutes in strength and conditioning, right? After school, you got homework you got to do. But after that, can you make 200 to 300 shots a day? Can you work on one of your weaknesses? Can you work on one of your strengths? So now you're kind of breaking your day up into a couple different workouts, but now you kind of allow your body to recover. And so you can actually go hard for the 45 to 60 minutes that you're in the gym or in the weight room or in the lab, wherever you're at. It's actually putting in hard work. It's really hard to kind of say, I've worked hard today, but you can kind of put it in a sense like, if I'm a track runner, if I'm a sprinter and I run 100 yards, if you're not gassed or you're not tired after that workout, okay, you didn't run as hard as you possibly could. That same thing doesn't really equate to basketball, but the recipe of pushing yourself in the weight room, making 200 to 300 shots, giving yourself 15 minutes to work on ball handling, working on a weakness for 20 to 30 minutes. If you're doing those things consistently, then you're at least on your way. But that is the bare minimum for access to, now I can play travel ball. Now I can be a starter on my varsity team. Now I can start to get recruited. But if you're not doing those things, you don't even have the ticket to get in.
I love the way you said that. What you got, Rod?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of what, Tony said. And I think the kids do work hard, but they have to understand that you have to work, towards the level you want to be at. So, like, let's say if I have an 8th grader, like, yeah, you might be working hard as an 8th grader for that 8th grade level, but if each level you get to requires a different level of work. And I don't think that's what a lot of times the kids, they understand. And it's like, if you're a high school kid, if you want to play in college, well, the work you do in high school versus the work you do in college is totally different. And same thing when you get up to, college and pros. And I remember my first year out, I got a job in France. And, the time difference, I don't know, it's like 6-7 hour time difference. And for me, I was like, yo, in order for me to kind of adjust and feel like I can get a head start, like, I used to work out at like 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning. So that because I was living back home at the time, and back home we have 24-hour gyms back in Chicago.
Sure.
So I used to work out like 1 or 2 in the morning to simulate it being, 7 a.m., 8 a.m. over in France. So it's like you always got to kind of think out the box when it comes to working out. And for most kids, and I'm gonna say it again, right? You don't know what you don't know. So,
Right.
like Tony said, there are certain things that you must do, like non-negotiables, right? Making jump shots. I tell kids all the day, like, if you're not making minimum 300 jump shots a day, and if you want to play college, like, what are we talking about? If you're not strength training, and if you want to play college basketball, like, what are we talking about? So, like, there's certain things that you have to do. If you're hanging out with your boys every weekend and you're missing opportunities to be in the gym, once again, like, what are we talking about? So I think and then we all go through it, right? In the moment, we think we're working hard, but
Right.
until you come across someone else, whether it's a player or coach or, who've done it and who's actually working, it's like, you don't know. I know at the high school I coach at, I do a lot of 6 a.m. workouts, and,
Right.
The first couple of weeks, everyone's showing up. Now they're, optional. So a lot of kids are like showing up, and then we get to week like 3, 4, and now you start seeing kids and it's like, oh, I'm tired. I have homework. I had this, I had that. And it's like, in college, ain't no one's going to care if you have homework, right? No one's going to care what you've done the night before. If the workout is at this time, if you're not there and ready to go, that can cost you playing time. And I don't think the kids realize that because Buffalo it's a small area and there's some talent, but it's not like a Florida, right? Or a Chicago where it's like, man, there's a lot of talent. And if you ain't doing everything you can, you will end up sitting on the bench and not getting that playing time. So I think kids just have to realize that, when you have access to someone who's been through it and can kind of guide you and show you the steps, like, you have to take advantage of it. And then, just even in the workouts, are you doing stuff that's going to translate over into an actual game? Are you doing step back threes? Are you doing transition threes? I mean, I can't tell you how many kids come down and, man, they can do a Euro, they can do all this stuff. But I'm like, yo, do a left-hand layup, do a reverse left-hand layup. And, like, they struggle. But they can give you all the, all the fancy stuff, all that. But it's, how many times are you really going to do that in a basketball game? Like, I don't even know how many step back threes I took in college. Like, not that, even professionally, like, just me personally. And, like, maybe if the shot clock's going down, but just to do that, unless you're an elite player.
Yeah.
Like, it ain't happening, man. And
well,
that's
Rod,
what
these
kids,
kids,
I think, need to understand.
Yeah, these kids don't understand that, like, literally, unless you are Steph Curry or like Caitlin Clark, these young kids don't understand that there are such things as like benchable shots. Like, if you bring the ball down the court and you go wild and the ball ricochets off the backboard into the other team's hands, there's like a 90% chance you're coming out of the game.
But then it's, coach, you hating on me, man. I can make that shot. Like, you don't believe in me. It's like, dude, I believe in the stats. Like, the stats show, like, you don't make that shot consistently.
Right.
And real quick, one thing before you get going.
Oh, yeah.
I tell my players one thing. I said, yo, if you want to shoot the ball 20 times a game, make 200 shots a day. And I won't say nothing. If you want to shoot the ball 30, make 300 shots a day. And the amount of kids that don't do it but still complain about shooting, I'm like, I told you exactly what you want to do if you want to shoot that many times a game. We have workouts every day. Make that many shots, and I won't say nothing. You got the green light.
I'm so happy you just said what you said, because I am sure both of you, as players, you've seen teammates do this, and as coaches, you've seen players do this, where you try to give someone objective information. There is absolutely nothing personal. If a kid tells you what their goal is, and you look at that kid and you say, right now, based on my experience, I do not think you are working hard enough to accomplish that goal. Or, hey, if you want this outcome, you got to do this, this, and this. And kids they take that really personal. right now.
Absolutely.
And I know how hard it is to deliver that message. So based on what you just shared, I want to make sure our listeners understand this is objective truth. Like, if you want to go Division I and you're not working hard enough to go Division I and you end up not going Division I think all three of us would agree that does not make you a bad person. Like, that makes you you. You have made your choices. You've been given your information and you've made your choices. But you can't have hurt feelings when someone tells you, if you want to do this, then you need to do X, Y, and Z, because guess what? Someone else is going to do it. And I think that a lot of people, to your point, Rod, especially in this community, they don't realize that it's not just about them. Like, I had a former coach or a former podcast where a coach came on and basically said, like, you got to remember, we're not just looking at you and saying no. We're comparing you to other people we're recruiting, and we're saying yes to them.
Yep.
And with that in mind, both of you started to allude to some skills that people should be practicing. And I want to give you an opportunity to hammer that home. Right now, what are the biggest skills that you guys see lacking in high school athletes that want to play collegiately? I know a lot of it, I'm going to guess a lot of it stems around actual in-game decision-making, but I want to give you an opportunity to speak your piece.
You got it.
Well, I think it depends on position. I mean, there are some common things, no matter if you're a big or you're a guard. And it's funny because I had actually Tony play with a Mitch Watt, so I had him in here the other day, and I had him talking to my big guy. He's a freshman. He like 6'5". He got a chance to be good, and I had him in the workout so he can just kind of see what a pro looks like working out. And at that level, everything Mitch did was intentional. I mean, from setting screens to how he ducked in, there was never a situation where like he just went through the motions. And I think a lot of times kids, especially in workouts, they don't realize that everything in that workout is important. It's like they pick and choose what part of the workout they're going to go hard, and that's important, when it's like the whole thing is important. So like if you're a big, some non-negotiables, like things you have to be able to do to even give yourself a chance, you got to be able to run the court, right? If you're a big and if you're not running the court, you're cutting yourself out, right? You have to be able to rebound. You have to be able to defend your position, right? And the paint. And then you just got to be able to finish around the basket. Like, those are non-negotiable. If you're big, you must do those things. Now, there's extras, right? Being able to put the ball on the floor, being able to shoot the three. Oh, also non-negotiable, setting screens, right? You got to be able to do that. The non-negotiables are going to be the things that's automatic. Like, if you can't do that, the extras don't matter. Like,
right.
That's a must. And like I said, for the extras, for the bigs, like shooting the three, putting the ball down on the floor, being able to switch off and guard a 1 or 2, on ball screen, stuff like that. If you're a guard, I think some non-negotiables now, the way the game is, one, you do have to be able to shoot the 3, and at a high level. The amount of kids that I see, like, I scored 25 points, but like, you took 25 shots. Like, that's not efficient. So you got to be able to shoot the 3. I think you obviously got to be able to handle the ball. With pressure, you have to be able to create for yourself and others, get in the lane, paint touches. And I think as a guard, you need a floater in your game. You have to be able to get in the paint and get a floater. And then obviously the non-negotiables for a guard, man, I always say, if you under 6 feet and if you ain't picking up full court, man, they just going to get a 6'4", 6'5" point guard who's going to meet the dude at half court. So, you got to be able to pick up at half court, right? You have to be able to, get up and down. No one wants a point guard who's walking it up, or no one wants wings who ain't going to sprint corner to corner. You got to be able to do that. So it's like a couple of things, like the work is the work. You can't bypass that. You can't get around it or anything like that. And, most kids, I think, don't understand that. It's almost like they think they're the exception, right? You see, like you said, you see a Steph Curry, and it's like, well, Steph Curry was the exception. Or you see guys who maybe didn't have that big of a high school career, like a like a Dame or CJ McCollum. And it's like, well, they were the exception. So then kids in turn think, well, if they did it and if they were the exception, then maybe I'm the exception too. And it's like, I get it, but the chances like aren't that high. And they did
Right.
the little things. And I kind of wish that people highlighted like their backstory a little bit more, because what we're seeing is a finished product, right? We're not seeing the long hours and long days in the gym working on the fundamentals. I mean, there was a summer where Steph Curry ain't shoot outside the paint, trying to refine his jump shot. But those are the things kids don't really understand and know. So if they can learn to just do the little things, because at the next level, if you're the main guy in high school, a coach is not recruiting you to come in and be the main guy in college. He's recruiting you to
Right.
come and play a role. So now you might turn into the man, right? But if you can't play a role, man, you're going to have a hard time adjusting. I think that's why we see so many kids transferring, because they're used to being the man and they don't understand that there's a role I got to play. And sometimes I just have to wait my turn. Like I had to wait 4 years at UB. It wasn't until my senior year where the ball was in my hand. I was able to shoot whatever shot I wanted. I had to put in my time and just keep my head down and just keep working. So, I think kids just need to understand that it's a process and the little things matter. And if you can get really good at doing the little things, from setting screens, running the court, finishing, making the open pass. I say it all the time, like passing's a skill. Like people just don't work on that. Playing defense, man, I think you give yourself a heck of a chance to, get minutes and be in a rotation consistently.
All right, Tony, Rod just answered that super thoroughly, so I want to kind of change it up a little bit and give you something a little bit different, because Rod just crushed that, and you don't know this yet, Rod, but there's like 5 social media clips coming out of what you just shared.
Oh, man, that's dope.
But so for you, Tony, I want to look at it a little bit on the other side, because you come from a coaching family, you have your own coaching experience, and Rod really spoke to the execution part. But I can also tell you, as someone that's been recruiting for 14 of the last 15 years, that I have been blown away by how much better people have gotten in terms of their athleticism and overall ability, while at the same time getting much worse at their basketball decision making. So from your perspective, as someone who handled the ball a lot in most aspects of their career, college and pro, what are the decision-making components that are missing right now that kids are working on, that maybe like you were required to have in high school, that are not as important right now at the high school level, but then as soon as they get to college, it really matters? What do you want to see those kids working on?
Yeah, so I'll take a quick step back to answer this question. We're in an era where the individual skill set is highlighted almost more than the team aspects.
Sure.
Especially in the youth sports and even high school. And I what I mean by that is, when it comes to training, when it comes to working out, a lot of guys are working on their bag, right? They're working on, how can I create a shot for myself? But to go along with a little bit what Rod said, when he talked about Steph Curry, like, yes, when we turn on ESPN the next day, or when we scroll through TikTok, we're going to see the 2 step backs that he hit that were big shots in the fourth quarter, and that were point 33 and 36 for him. What they're not going to see is in the first quarter when he ran the court and he did a backdoor layup, or when he was in the corner spotted up, or where he came off a pin down screen and it was just a normal catch and shoot jump shot, right? Those are the things that I think we're lacking in the youth development when it comes to the majority of our workouts, right?
Sure.
So just to hit on that briefly, like, you should be working on a ton of catch and shoots. How am I spacing out the floor? How am I reading, reacting? I should be doing those things in my workout. If most of my workout comes down to me being on an island with the defender and I'm trying to create space to get a shot off, it's going to be tough when you transition to the next level. So to go back to the question that you asked originally, was a lot of the decision-making things, like you said, are some of the things that are overlooked. So what happens when you're coming off of, if you're a guard, what happens when you come off a ball screen and the big man's guy hedges? How are you reacting to that? How are you reading your defender? Is he going over the screen? Is he going under the screen? Are they trying to ice the screen, which means just basically force you away from the screen? How are you reacting to all these situations? Because these are the situations you're going to be in a lot more than the shot clock being 4 seconds and I got to get a bucket. All right. The other thing they have to work on more is what do we do when we get in the paint? Because a lot of times guards are driving, and you'll see it on every level from high school and college, even in youth basketball. When you touch the paint, you are doing really good things for your team. How many paint touches are we getting? How many times are we driving to the basket? But then when you get there, then what decision are you making? Did you read the help side? So now you have a spot-up shooter. Did the help side even come over? Because if they don't, now you should be finishing at the basket. Did you find where your guy who just picked and popped for you, do you know where his defender is? And do you know where he is? So you can then decide if it's your turn to shoot or if it's your time to pass. So the way I grew up personally kind of helped me develop that, because all we did was play, right? It wasn't a lot of skill-based stuff. It was just we're playing, who's open, who's not, who's the hot hand, who are we trying to feed, who do we need to get open, who's running the court, who are we feeding? Those are the kind of things that just develop naturally, at least in my upbringing. And just the transition to, you know, social media trainers, celebrity trainers, you know, TikTok trainers, all of those things, we have to kind of get back to what is done more often and what decisions are made more frequently, as opposed to island work, right? Bag work, right? I got this guy, me, mano y mano. Like that stuff is the stuff that's highlighted the next day. But the majority of the game is played 5-on-5, finding the open man, running the court, reading, reacting. Those are the things that kind of get underappreciated, at least from what we're seeing.
Do you guys have time for two more?
Yep.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So my immediate thought after what you two are sharing is, well, if you're a young kid, where would you go to get this information? And I think about social media. And weirdly, social media is both the best thing to happen to basketball development and the absolute worst thing to happen to basketball development at the exact same time.
Yeah.
And, you know, you guys know this because Tony, I particularly shared this with you over the years. Anytime someone at the D3 level, while I was working down there, told me they wanted to get better at ball handling, I sent them a pro training workout on YouTube every single time. So, like, that was a great source of information, and it deserves the following it has. Then at the same time, you open up Instagram, and I'm sure for two basketball purists like yourselves, you see some of the dumbest things that you could possibly imagine. But then, of course, because the kids are young and they like flashy things, that's the stuff the kids want to work on. So my question to you, as people that are centered in skill development, which is oftentimes like a vilified thing, like coaches want to have this beef with skill developers a lot of times. What messages do you send to these kids to get them doing the right things? And more importantly for this, what would you tell a young person to try to avoid? Like when they see something flashy on the internet, what would be the thing you want them to like steer away from and refocus to actually get better at basketball?
Yeah, I'll take this one first. So this is definitely not a bash on other trainers, other coaches, or anything like that. So I want to make sure I said that first before I go into what I'm about to say.
Sure.
But essentially, I'm actually going to take it off the court just for a second, right? When I'm sick, right? When I have an illness, right? If I have something that's going on for a while, I go and see a doctor, right? I go to see someone who's had the education. I go to see someone who's had the experience. I go to see someone who's seen it before and knows how to remedy the situation as quick as possible. When my car breaks down, right? And then I know there's some people who are self-mechanics, but I'm taking it to a shop. I'm going to see a mechanic. I'm going to see someone who can like literally look at my car and be like, this is the problem. It's either this problem or this problem, and I know how to fix both of them, right? So to bring it back to the court, the same thing or the same mindset should be applied. I should be looking and talking to people who have done it before, who have the experience, who have been in a position where they have to solve the same problem that I have. So now I can expedite my learning curve by feeding off of their experience. What you don't want to do, what you want to try to avoid, and I'm not saying that there's no trainers out there who haven't played at a high level that you can't learn from, because there's definitely a few guys out there, but the things you do want to try to avoid are the guys who have you dribbling more than 3 times to get a bucket. The guys who are saying, you know, this is what's going to make you elite, right? You don't need to be elite in a lot of categories. If you are good at the basics, if you're an elite fundamentalist, you're going to be an elite basketball player, period. I mean, there was a time where Klay Thompson, I think, scored 67 points with 11 dribbles in the entire game. So, like, there's a lot of things that you can do that make you an efficient athlete. And then there's a time where Klay Thompson, I think, scored 67 points with 11 dribbles in the entire game. So, like, there's a lot of things that you can do that make you an efficient athlete. And then there's a time where Klay Thompson, I think, scored 67 points with 11 dribbles in the entire game. So, like, there's a lot of things that you can do that make you an efficient athlete. And then there's a time where Klay Thompson, I think, scored 67 points with 11 dribbles in the entire game. So, like, there's a lot of things that you can do that make you an efficient athlete. And then there's a time where Klay Thompson, I think, scored 67 points with 11 dribbles in the entire game. So, like, there's a lot of things that you can do that make you an efficient athlete. And then there's a time where Klay Thompson, I think, scored 67 points with 11 dribbles in the entire game. So, like, there's a lot of things that you can do that make you an efficient athlete. And then there's a time where where all the other stuff you can avoid, right? All the additional step backs, Euro steps, spin moves, while there are certain positions that call for it, there's certain times in the game that do call for something like that. The other 85 to 95% of the time, you were shot faking one dribble pull up. You were spacing out catch and shoot. You were running the floor and you're making a layup. You're at the end of you're getting fouled from driving hard to the basket and making a few free throws. Like, there's going to be, out of your 20 shots that you shoot, 10 to 15 of those are going to be basic one dribble pull ups, floaters, running the court, making a layup, spotting up, shooting a three, coming off of a down screen or a ball screen and knocking down the shot. Those are going to be the majority of your shots. And those are the things you should strongly work on, and not necessarily avoid completely everything else, but it should just be a small part of your regimen instead of the main piece of your workouts.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. What you got, Rod?
I mean, I think Tony pretty much, hit it on the head with that. In your workouts, I think there's a time and place for everything. And, whether it's a 2-ball, dribbling, tennis balls, cones, all that stuff, like, I think that part or those types of drills can play a part in a workout, but it should be, 5-10 minutes, maybe something at the beginning just to get you warmed up, maybe work on hand-eye coordination, something like that, right? But once you actually get into like the heart of the workout, it needs to be centered around things that you're going to do in the game, just like Tony said, 95% of the time. I know the workouts that I do here, everything is based off of, a lot of catch and shoot, 1-2 dribble pull-ups. So we're driving and kicking, we're respacing, relocating, we're coming off screens, throwing back, hitting the corner. Like, we're working on game situations and we're repping that out. So that way, when they get in the game and they go through those same situations, they know, like, hey, as I'm driving, that opposite corner is going to be open. If I'm coming off this screen, my big's going to be rolling. This is the type of pass I'm going to get to my big. Or as he's rolling, I know the guy in the corner is going to help. So now I'm going to throw it over top to the guy in the corner. So, like, those are the situations in our workouts that we go through. So it's more game-based and, like, situational, as opposed to just, all right, we're going to set up all these cones, right? We're going to do all these ball handling drills, retreat, double step back between the legs, behind the back, fade away. Type of stuff. And you might do that 2-3 seconds left on the shot clock. You got to get a shot off. But if you really hammer home just the basic stuff, I'm telling you, it's going to go a long way, because the reality of it, like Tony said, you don't need to be elite. You need to be consistent. Can you consistently make shots? Can you consistently get in the paint? Right? Can you consistently take care of the ball? If you can do those, can you consistently defend? If you can do those things, you're going to play, right? There's only a handful of guys that are elite. And I think we need to stop training to be elite, because I don't want, like, LeBron's elite, KD's elite, like Steph Curry, like, those are elite guys. So we need to train more on just being consistent as opposed to being elite. And I know, everyone now putting stuff on IG, and that's not going to get the views, right? The things that are going to get the views are the crazy things. And I get that. So, you have to kind of, and sometimes even with what we do, to keep kids sometimes coming back, it's like, if you just do that stuff, sometimes that can be considered boring, right? So what's going to happen is, even though the kid needs it, they're going to end up sometimes maybe going somewhere else and doing stuff that they don't need. But it's fun. It's entertaining. But fun and entertaining doesn't necessarily equate to being efficient, right? Getting minutes. So a lot of times kids are like, hey, I'm struggling shooting. Well, I'm like, well, what are you doing? Well, I'm doing this and this. I'm doing all these shots off the dribble and all. Well, what kind of shots do you get in your game? Catch and shoot, drifts to the corner, lifts. Are you working on those? No. Well, there's the gap. Like, you got to work on the type of shots you shoot at the game speed, and in your workouts and in practice that you're going to get in the game. There's always going to be this gap in between the two. So
before we move on to our last question, I just want to let the record state that we are talking to two former professional athletes. This was their job. And they have both in their own way just shared with you that their workouts were basic and centered around their roles and developing consistency in their roles to better serve their teams. And that's what earned them more. Just really important to throw that out there. So my last question, and just so you guys know, I am asking this question to everyone on the second half of the season, because at the end of the day, this is designed to be a podcast about the recruiting process. So this is my hypothetical. Tony Watson and Rod Middleton have magically traveled back in time. They are 16 years old. They're sophomores in high school, except they know everything that they know now, and it's the year 2024. So you have access to all these new things, but you're 16 again. What would the two of you do to kickstart your recruiting process right now? If you just decided, I want to play college basketball, what would you do to kickstart your process right now?
Before Rod answers, are we actually college prospects up to this point, or am I just picking up a basketball for the first?
I am telling you, as Coach Jared Zeidman, that you are able Division I prospects, and I believe you have high ceilings. So good question, and I've provided you the answer I think you need.
I appreciate it. All right, yeah, Rod, you got it first.
Well, I think the first thing, like I said, I said it earlier in the podcast. I'm going out and I'm trying to find, a trainer or someone who has done what I'm trying to do. Mm-hmm. I think that's the first thing. And I always say, man, if I had someone to guide me and, help me, shorten that learning curve, I think I would have developed a lot sooner than what I did. So I think that's the first thing. And then once I find that person, I'm taking their advice and I'm in the gym, I'm working, and my game was never flashy. I was a guy who I did all the little things, and it's funny because to kind of get off topic, but my first year overseas in France, coach brings me into the office. We weren't doing that good. We was losing a lot of games. It's like beginning of December, and he was like, we need to make some changes. And in my mind, I'm like, man, they about to send me home. First job, I'm about to get sent home. But he was like, management, they wanted to send you home. He was like, but I see you every day in the gym before practice starts. You're in the gym after practice. And he was like, I vouch for you. He's like, I know your time's coming. He was like, just keep doing, what you're doing. So I ended up avoiding getting sent home my first year, all because I was the first one in the gym, last one to leave every day, right? And the coach saw that. And because of that, he was able to vouch for me, to management when they wanted to make changes and send people home. So I ended up sticking around just because of that. So, going back to, if I was 16, just continue to be in the gym, have access to the gym, get in there early before school, working out. I really didn't take into strength training until I got to prep school. That's when I really understood the importance of it. My first maybe 4 years of high school, man, I wanted nothing to do with the weight room, right? I just didn't know. So
knowing what I know about you, that's crazy to hear out loud.
Yeah, like
that's a crazy thing to hear out loud.
Like, I was the kid when the football, because I played basketball and football. When the football team had lifting, I played basketball. When the basketball team had lifting, I played football. Like, I always found a way to, get out the weight room. Because in my mind, I was like, yo, I just want to play. I don't want to work out. I don't want to do anything in the weight room. I just wanted to, work out, be on the court, or be on the football field. So, looking back, I wish my basketball, the strength training side of it, I did that a lot earlier. I didn't start lifting until 18, 19, maybe. Mm-hmm. And it's crazy because my freshman year at UB, I was the strongest kid on the team. I mean, I came into UB, I was benching 320 as a freshman. That's all I did in prep school was just lift. So if I knew that in high school and just, what type of shots to take, what to work on, man, I might not even be on this podcast right now. I would probably be I'll probably be finished. I think I probably would have made the league or playing overseas somewhere. Like
Yeah.
I would have still been playing if I had that type of advice. So I think that's what I would have done. Just hit the weight room and then found someone who was knowledgeable, who can just guide me along and whatever they told me, that's what I'm doing.
So key emphasis on finding a mentor, taking the mentor's
Yeah.
advice, and then focusing on your growth. What you got, T2?
Yeah. So I'm gonna go back first. I would buy the Hooper Handbook, 12 Habits that every basketball
love it.
player needs.
There will.
There we
I
go.
swear to God, as you say that, there's going to be a picture of it. We'll do like a picture and like a smiley face or something. Yeah.
Absolutely.
There we
No,
go.
I'm slightly joking, but at the same time, if I'm making the decision at 16, I'm getting organized, and that's exactly what
Yeah.
the book does. It helps you get organized and make a schedule, all those things. So I would make a promise to myself that this is what I'm going to do, and here's how I'm going to get from A to B. And then I'm going to gather my team of people who's going to help me get from A to B. You're not going to be able to do it alone. You need coaches, you need trainers, you need parents, you need a support staff or a support system. If you don't have parents, find somebody who's willing to help you on this journey. If you don't have a good basketball coach, go find a good trainer that can help you get to this journey. Vice versa. If you don't have a trainer, find a good basketball coach that can help you through this journey. So I'm gathering all the ammunition that I need to get me to the next level, as well as working out relentlessly, working on my strengths, working on my weaknesses, getting stronger, getting faster, getting more explosive. I'm also searching for opportunities to showcase myself. And I say that very hesitantly because there's an event every single weekend that claims that
Right.
they're
You got to
helping
pick the right one.
You have to pick the right ones. You have to do your research. This is where those mentor, where your supporting staff, where your team is going to help you make the right decisions on which events are worth going to, which events aren't worth going to, and then also putting you in a position or on a platform to then showcase the skills that you've developed up to that point. And what I mean by that is, are you playing on a circuit? Are you playing on a team? Are you playing in front of coaches? If you're playing on a travel team that no coaches are watching, you are not getting recruited, period. No one's recruiting you. So you have to make sure you're on a travel team who's playing in front of people, who is then looking at you to recruit. All right. And then on those teams that you're on, you have to make sure that you are a factor in the game too.
Right.
It's great to play for, the EYBL team. It's great to play in the Adidas Gauntlet. But if you're sitting on the bench for most of the game, or if you're just running up and down most of the game, you're not doing anything that's helping your position. So make sure you have a good reality check and you put yourself on a team that's going to showcase you. Not necessarily, you don't have to be a starter. You don't have to be the best guy on the team. You just have to be in a position where you're actually impacting the game. Are you picking up full court so that they can see you can play defense against the other team's best player? Are you in a position to make shots? Are you in a position to contribute in some way, shape, or form that allows the coaches who are watching to then evaluate you and look at you and ask the one question that they ask about every single player that they're recruiting? Can this player help me win more games? If you can't do that, you are not getting recruited by that school. If they don't think you can help them win games, then they're going to find someone else who can then help them win games. So you have to be in a position where you can impact the games that they're coming to watch. And then you have to put yourself in a position where they look at you and say, hey, this player will fit in this position on my program. And now I want to see more of this player to make sure they are the right player that I want to recruit and hopefully offer a scholarship. But working out relentlessly, finding the support staff that I need or support team to help me get from A to B, and then putting myself in a position to showcase my skills would be the things that I would do at age 16 to get me to the next level.
I would describe
Hey,
the last
real
45
quick,
minutes.
Let me just.
Let's hear it. Let's hear it,
Yeah,
right?
let me just. It's funny that Tony said, knowing what circuits and teams to play on. And when I was in high school, there was two teams. There was one team, it was called Illinois Warriors, and they was on the EYBO circuit, right? The Nike gear and all that stuff. And there was another team that was more of like a local, but they played in some good tournaments. And the tournaments that they went to, was maybe low major D1 tournament. I mean, coaches, D2 and stuff like that. So I had the opportunity to choose which one. And obviously I chose the EYBL one because it's Nike. I'm getting free shoes. I'm getting this. And, we go to Peach Jam and, we're playing against some of these guys. When I say, like, I didn't get in. There were games like
Right.
I did not play.
Hmm.
And I'm like, yo, like I'm pissed because I thought I was good. And even in practice, like I competed with those guys, but like that team, they already had like their guys set. I mean, they had guys going to Iowa, Michigan State, Illinois, Wisconsin, and I was more of like a low major D1. And like looking back, I'm like, yo, I was just there to probably like fit the bill for some of the other players. You know what I'm saying? So understanding, your situation and are you actually going to be a part of the team and playing, or are you just on the team? And I think
Right.
sometimes kids fall in love with saying, oh, I'm playing on the EYBL team, when really you need to play on this other team that's going to go to maybe some of these other tournaments, but you're going to get seen. You're going to be able to play. You're going to be in the rotation, and it might not be the top of the top, but you just got to get your foot in the door. And I think that's where a lot of kids fall short, is that they want to do that next, big flashy thing, to play for the elite team and do all that stuff because of all the promises. And it's like, no one's coming to watch y'all if y'all in the back gym.
Right.
You know what I mean? No, like you got to be on a team where you can actually showcase your skill. So, I think Tony made a good point where saying like you have to do your research, and it does take a team for you to understand what type of player you are, what role, and be honest with like what level do you see yourself at? And just to say, yo, I'm a high major. Like we all want to be high majors, but the reality of it is like, I was a low major player. I went to UB and, kind of end up turning into that mid major. And, UB, we kind of, rose from, being at the bottom of the MAC to now mid towards the top of the MAC. So, you just got to take advantage of the opportunities you're given and then make the most of them. And then, who knows what can happen from there. So,
Yeah, one thing to add too, Jared, before we wrap things
Yeah.
up, since I know we got to go. One kind of thing that I've been telling a lot of the players that I've worked with is, for whatever level you want to go to, Division 1, Division 2, Division 3, pick the school that you can foresee yourself at. From there, go to their roster and literally click the guys who you think are in the position that you want.
Mm.
From there, look at their bios. Look exactly what they are, what they did in high school, what they do. If your resume does not amount to their resume, chances are you're not going to that school. For example, if I want to play at Kentucky, I'm making up everything.
Yeah.
And I'm a point guard like I was when I played. I'm going to go to their roster. I'm going to click and see who are all the point guards on their roster. I'm going to look at some very specific details. How tall are they? How much do they weigh? What they did in high school? What were their stats like? What accolades did they achieve? Who did they play for in the coming up in high school? All those
Right.
things are going to then say, maybe I can compete at this level. For me, I'm a 6'1", I can shoot, I can make good decisions, but Kentucky's point guards, they're 6'5". They're fast, they're athletic. They play McDonald's All-American. They play EY, you know what I say? So they have a very good track record. And I'm not saying the stats are going to be, apples and apples, but at the same time, there's going to be a lot of indications that show you if this is where you're kind of amounting yourself. And I'm not trying to discourage anybody. I'm just trying to say, let's look at this from the lens that the colleges are looking at, because
As it makes sense.
As it makes sense, right? So at Kentucky, you have to be 6'5" to play point guard for them, because the other teams that they're going to play, Tennessee, Florida, Duke, North Carolina, their point guards are going to be 6'5" and athletic. So can you guard the other guys who that team's going to play against? So those are the kind of things that kind of help. I've walked players down this path to say, okay, that's cool that you want this dream. All right, so let's look at what you need to become in order for you to get to this level. And that reality check has helped some players. So now they kind of dial in where they should kind of, focus themselves and things like that. Sometimes it's discouraged them, but at least they now know the truth so that they can then progress. Now you're at the crossroad. Do I continue down this path? Do I change what I'm doing, or do I double down and make sure I get to where I'm actually trying to go? That's just another way for you to kind of see where you stack up and maybe how you can potentially help in your recruiting efforts as well.
If I were to invent a stat, I guess I would call the stat valuable information per minute, like almost like you were breaking down the engine of the car. This is like the Floyd Mayweather of valuable information per minute podcast. There was no fat on this interview. This was 12 rounds of really like pound for pound, fast moving, the most information you'll ever get in a podcast. This was incredible. This is going to be super valuable for our listeners. Thank you guys so much for coming on. I can't wait to see you again in Buffalo. We got to catch up for a Bills game or something. But thank you guys again for your time.
Love it.
Absolutely, man.
That's going to do it for another episode of the Nail the Recruiting Process podcast. Thanks again for tuning in. I hope you got something out of today's podcast. If you'd like to learn more about anything related to Nail the Recruiting Process, the book, my work, maybe wanting to work with me one-on-one, anything under the sun, you're going to visit www.nailtherecruitingprocess.com. If you'd like to follow me on social media, you can follow me at Nail the Recruiting Process on Instagram or at Jared the Coach on Twitter and TikTok. Both of those handles are just one word, no characters, no spaces. If you'd like to ask something of me directly, if you'd like a question that maybe you want answered on a future podcast, or if you have an idea for something we should talk about in a future episode, please reach out to me via email. I would love to hear from you. My email address is recruitinggear@gmail.com. That's the word recruiting, then the word gear combined. recruitinggear@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening, and we hope to catch you next time.